This is part 2 in our review of advanced features available translating in Catalyst 2019. In the Concordance window, you can search for any existing text to translate in concordance with any existing translations. You can enter your text in the field and opt to search against the original or the translated fields within your translation memory. The results will show you any instance of the matching text within the translation memory, highlighting what format of translation memory it is and the status of the segment within the string. Here in the Translate To toolbar, you can access this facility even quicker simply by selecting the text in either the translation field or the source field, right-clicking and selecting To Concordance, and here is a shortcut as well. By doing so, you're simply automatically applying the text in a concordance and clicking on the Go To button, and it will apply using the latest settings that you have used. So again, here we have the list of matches that are found within the active translation memories. Those active translation memories can be set up here in settings, or simply it will use any active translation memory listed in the Translate To toolbar. Going back to the concordance, once here you can reference any existing translation so that you can stay consistent as you're translating. You may double click on any of those fields and select the text in order to copy it if you want to paste it in your existing translation. The same applies in the source as well as translation. While you're doing a search, you can opt to remove old results, which means that if I deselect this settings and I looked for another word or it could be a sentence, click on Go. I now have the latest search that I have done at the top, and my selected the last search that I did is below. You can collapse them and go back to the previously searched one, and you can collapse and extend them. So if you're working without the remove all results, those will stack up as you're translating away until you select that option again, at which point if I search for dialogues, it will simply be just the latest search available in the frame. And of course you have the very straightforward options. You can search in the current file, meaning the active TTK, and you can opt to use match case and hold words only. The Find and Replace in Catalyst enables you to search any text anywhere within the translation project. And this can apply to the active project, which is a selected resource in the navigator window, and this is recursively. You can select the active project, or you could even select a batch of TTK projects on disk. To search for text, of course, you enter the text itself in the Find What field, and then select to search in the original field, in the translated field, or both. By default, the search is done on the text, or it can be also searched in the text in raw format. We'll see further details about this later. It can also search into inline tag names, attribute names, or attribute values. Also, this search can be extended to the metadata of the project, such as the memo, translator node, the ID, etc. And of course you have the usual options which is found in most search facilities. We'll search in the text for now, and the result of the search can be listed out into the Find and Replace one of two windows. Let's go ahead. The Find and Replace one window is displaying the search of our result, which was to be found within the current project. To go into the second Find and Replace, we can go to the window which currently has no results. Let's perform this search one more time, the same details, but this time we're going to also search in IDs and send the result to the second Find and Replace window. This time we have 11 results. In fact, we can see that The first segment doesn't have the word report within the text in original or translated, but it is indeed in the ID. And we can refer back to the first window to compare the results if needed. The search can also be filtered to only report against specific statuses. By default, most statuses are included, but if we wish to look for the word report within only signed off segments, we can deselect the other options and run the search one more time. The same can be applied to labels, so you could specify which label you might want to restrict your find to. For the moment, let's just search for signed off segments only. Now our search is back in the first tab, and the previous search are collapsed automatically, so it is still possible to refer to them by expanding the group or collapsing it back. Now this time we only found 3 results when we had 6 earlier, so only 3 segments with the word report in it are actually signed off. When searching for text, you do not have to always look into the original or translated fields. For instance, you might be searching in the IDs only. Let's search for filters. We have 1 result. However, if searching within the original or translated text, you will always have to select one of the options below, whether it is plain text or raw text. Searching in plain text, let's look for filters in French. And we have 6 results. Searching in plain text no tags means that Catalyst ignores the inline tags while searching. So if we look for filtre son in French and search in the translated field with with just text, we get 2 results. The first result being that segment we're highlighting now. Now let's compare what is the difference with raw text. Selecting the raw text option means that you're looking for text in the file in its raw format. Imagine this HTML page as it is in plain text format, with the inline tags spelled out as they are in HTML code. So if we were to look for filtre son with the inline tag found within, we would actually have to type the n tag span found within, and now we have 1 result. Now let's review some example of searching against inline tags options. So we can search for an inline tag alone, such as span, and find all the strings that contain the span inline tag within the original segment. Another option is some span attributes, here class, and the value is HCP6. So for example, let's look for the attribute name class and see how many segments we have. And we can search now for attribute HCP6 again in the original segment, and we found 10 strings. These are segments for which one of the inline tag has a value of HCP6, as can be seen here. The validation expert is a key feature of Alchemy Catalyst in controlling the quality of the translations. It enables to check for a series of tests against individual segments to try to find out commonly introduced mistakes. This expert can be run against the active project, meaning the selection in the navigator window. This means that if we select the entire project, we can run validation against the entire TTK project. Let's run, for now, let's just run against one HTML file to see the error that are introduced. And there are 43 errors listed into this one file. We probably should go and fix each individual one of those. But this expert is not available in all editions of Alchemy Catalyst. There is another way to check for mistakes as you translate, and that is to use the auto validation in the translator toolbar, which is a toggle you can turn on or off. First, let's review what checks we might be interested to run against this particular file. Click on the arrow under the Validate button in the Expert ribbon and select Option. There you have a list of all the tests available. For now, let's select which test we're interested in. Let's remove the software-specific tests for now. Keep the linguistic tests and maybe the placeable tests, which, for example, well-formed inline tags. We'll see how this comes into play. There are ways of ignoring specific conditions, ignoring the error if, for example, it is also present in the source. And I will just for now mark the validation errors and see what this option does. With my validation option selected in advance, I can click on Automatic Validation button so that every time I translate a segment, let's say here we're going to spell da instead of de for French, and I click Return to move to the next segment, we can see a validation error icon has appeared, indicating that a mistake has been introduced. We can go back to that segment and review the errors that are listed under the Validation Errors tab. It's highlighting that there was an incorrect spelling. This is one of the checks that it failed. So we can review that segment, fix the error, and we can check here and there as well by clicking Perform Validation to check if we have resolved all errors. By clicking on it, we see no longer an error listed under Validation Errors, and the icon is also removed in the string list. Let's move to another segment. Here we have a glossary match, for which I will purposely not use the agreed translation. So let's say that we are removing the word projet. And I'm also going to purposely introduce another mistake by removing one of the inline tags, which is one of the specific tests I highlighted earlier. Now if I click on Return, ready to translate the next segment, again we're seeing an error in the segment that we have just finished and already indicating some error in the next segment. But let's go back to the previous segment and see that we have 3 errors. The correct use of a glossary term. We didn't use the glossary translation for project workspace. We've got an inline tags well formed, meaning that there's one opening but there's not a closing one, and it's also indicating that the closing span tag. So those 2 errors are quite linked. So to fix this, I can bring it back in and make sure that I use the correct translation from the glossary. So I can highlight this text, double click over here to bring it over, and click on F5 to validate the segment one more time. And now we've cleared the mistake, and we can move on to the next segment by pressing Return. Already here, before we start working, since there is already a translation in there, it has already validated that there is a mistake, and we can work from there. So the automated validation, once turned on, enables you to check as you work for each segment that you translate and move to the next. As soon as you press Return, it does the equivalent of pressing the Perform Validation and checks for any errors. So it is important to make sure that in your option you select to mark validation errors so that it can easily be noted right here, and you have the ability to maybe ignore all the errors for now and come back to the errors later by just filtering them and maybe running through each individual segment and checking what needs to be fixed.